line 5, 4. Okay.
All right. Ready? Let's do this.
If I remember how to do this.
Tonight on the PowerScripting podcast, we are pleased to have with us back again. You've been on the show many times. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you. Hi, Hal. Hi, John.
Hello.
So we are Hal. I am remote. I'm in San Jose on business, and you know what? It just so happens that Alan lives and works in San Jose.
Well, not technically. I mean,
you know.
I work in Palo
area.
Alto, but live in Santa Cruz, so it's kind of in between.
But we're talking about like you work like and live like 30 minutes from here.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Let's do that.
Okay. I mean, if we did the same thing in reverse, and you were in my town, you could have said Atlanta, and I would have accepted that.
Oh, okay.
So y'all don't do that with Palo Alto or San Jose? Or?
I don't know. Maybe I'm just too finicky.
Is there a metro area that I could have said?
Dude, I work with engineers. You have to be very specific, right? When I give use cases to engineers, they have to know what they're talking about.
What if I said South Bay?
South Bay, yeah.
Okay.
That sounds good.
All right. So.
You know what is even weirder is the fact that Alan pinged me last week. He's like, hey, I haven't been on the show in a while. When can I come on? And Hal's like, hey, I'm going to be there literally on next week. So
it was a funny coincidence.
It was.
Glad it worked out.
Perfect.
So thanks for coming over to hang out with me in my hotel room. It's not awkward at all.
Yeah.
So we're here on the hotel Wi-Fi, and we'll do our best. Hopefully the sound is good enough. But what's going on with you? So you reach out to us. I assume you've got interesting things you're working on.
Yeah, it's been, I don't even think I came on with the last release. I used to come on every release and tell you what was new with PowerCLI. I don't think I came on the last release, so I figured it's about time I did come on and we caught up, because we've been doing a ton of stuff with, PowerCLI and PowerCLI Core and PowerShell itself. And, I just feel like we've got a ton to talk about.
I'm not even sure you have the same job title. I think I saw something on LinkedIn that you got a promotion or something a while ago.
Yeah, I did. About 3 weeks ago, actually, I got a promotion to Senior Product Line Manager.
Right on.
Nice.
Sounds fancy, right?
What's a product line?
A product line means I manage more than one product.
Okay.
So my official title is Senior Product Line Manager for APIs, SDKs, and CLIs.
Okay.
So it's kind of the three.
When you started, you only owned PowerCLI.
Well, when I started, I was in technical marketing for PowerCLI.
Right. Okay.
So I was just customer facing, talking, and blogging, all that good stuff. And then, I became the product manager for PowerCLI, and then picked up another couple of CLIs like ESX CLI and VCLI and some of the other random CLIs that they have VMware. And then following that, picked up APIs and SDKs as well. So now I own all the three-letter acronyms.
Do you have like the vSphere SDK and like all of those?
Yeah, we do. Yep, I have the SDKs for vSphere as well.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right.
So
that is good to know.
And even but there's a ton of SDKs, a ton of CLIs.
I remember when I was learning how to do programming against the vSphere SDK, and I was trying to do different things to automate some stuff at work. I think I was at IBM at the time, and I was learning PowerShell at the same time as well. And I remember even that, back then it was confusing. Multiple hooks, and that was when I learned that you could have one product with multiple SDKs.
Right.
And you realize the complexity behind the scenes.
Exactly. That that's partially my job right now, is actually picking up the mess that we have and trying to simplify that.
Yeah.
Trying to get it down to something that our customers want, and also get it down to one Java SDK and one Python SDK. One CLI maybe. Who knows, right?
So have the design patterns that you have learned and gotten accustomed to through your use of PowerShell and developing PowerCLI, has that affected how you look at the rest of these products that you now have?
Yeah, it totally has, actually. One of the things that PowerShell just got right from the start was making it admin focused, making it very simplified.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take that and you apply it to APIs, you apply it to everything nowadays, right? I mean, every app is now on a simplified mode, right? Everybody wants their app to be very simple, easily picked up, easily used.
Yeah.
So trying to do that with our API, kind of learning from a lot of the things that we did in PowerCLI, a lot of things that you would return by default, a lot of the object models, a lot of the way that you would lay your API out to be more, simplified and modern day developer orientated.
Right. So
definitely.
Do you ever work with? Do you have user experience folks that you work with?
Yes, I do.
Did you have to bring? Was that new to bring user experience professionals to a text user interface as opposed to a GUI?
That's funny, actually.
I would imagine there's like kicking and dragging.
Oh yeah, totally. I'm still doing that right now. Okay. The UX guys and UI. They only talk to UI. So where's your button and where's your window?
Yeah.
And well, how am I supposed to help you then? And it's like, no. People really do care about a very simplified and easy to use API that looks nice and they can interact with maybe, And the CLI, it needs to be simple. And, so you have to kind of teach the UI guys about all this stuff. And then their UI mode kicks in their UX mode kicks in and they kind of, they know how to talk to personas and how to work this stuff out. And they have their procedures about the way that they design these things. So as soon as you get past that hurdle, they kind of kick in and they go and do a good job of it. So still doing that though.
So one thing I learned, I learned it through my use of PowerShell, and I didn't realize what the software creation side of it was when in PowerShell it's like this is a task-oriented system. Command lines are their higher level, and you think about it's kind of a high efficiency, and you're thinking about that workflow.
Yeah.
Later on, I learned about personas and workflows and use cases. Right. Seems to me that anything that was written before, I don't know what, any SDK that was written before PowerShell, as far as I'm concerned, didn't take that stuff into account at all.
I think it's a change in the way that developers thought and think nowadays. And I really do think there's a push towards simplification now, just not just from the UI, but from APIs, from everything that we do in life. I blame the iPhone.
I was actually going to say that. I was listening to another podcast. It's called Exponent. Yeah, Exponent.
Okay.
Episode 92, in case anybody's interested.
Right.
They were talking about the consumerization of IT.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, they were talking exactly about this kind of topic and the effect of how, the things that we learned from the iPhone, reflect in the enterprise. So you've seen that even in SDKs and APIs.
And it's also a change in the admin as well. Before admins were very pointy, clicky, working on single machines, working on single infrastructures. I remember my first role in IT, I was the manager of a single box, right? It was the Windows NT box that had Exchange on it. And I was the guy that looked after that.
Yeah.
You go find one guy that looks after one server now, right? I mean, they're talking like hundreds, thousands, even tens of thousands of virtual machines. So that need for kind of automation and up-leveling of the admin is kind of, we need simpler tools to be able to do that. And there's a lot more people talking APIs, talking, CLIs and needing to use things en masse nowadays. So it's all ties up together.
Do you have any numbers or stats that you can share that might have come from your experience on the VMware product side, for example, that might talk to like density or number of VMs, per engineer, those kinds of metrics? Do you have anything that you could rattle off that makes sense?
Don't know. I mean, all I know is it's gone from tens to thousands.
Yeah,
certainly.
I mean that's my general impression.
Yeah, certainly. Definitely managing thousands, and even in this kind of DevOps world, managing tens of thousands. So yeah, I mean, who knows what the number is per VM per admin nowadays? I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious to hear just anecdotally from our listeners and from anybody in the live chat room. Has the number of systems and you manage day to day changed over time?
All right.
So what do you think of since the last time you've been on here? Probably DevOps, at least for Windows, was really something that was starting to kick off. I mean, DevOps has been around in the IT world at a wider scale for several years now. But I think for Windows, it's really just kind of ramping up.
Yeah.
So, do you have any thoughts on that and how that affects how people use SDKs and APIs and CLIs?
It's just definitely getting more and more people involved. It's a good mix of the developer and the admin that are getting involved with this now. So the admins are learning APIs and SDKs, and the developers kind of know that stuff anyway, and they're learning the operations side. So I think that the entire mix is bringing just more and more people my way, right?
Yeah.
They want to know about APIs, they want to know about SDKs, and they want to know about CLIs. And often the most easiest way to abstract the APIs and SDKs is using a CLI and get the job done in a single line of code. Whether that's a prototype or whether they bake that into their product.
Yeah.
So we'll come on to it, but I see a lot more of the PowerCLI core actually being used for that.
I was about to bring that up.
The doors that's opening for me at the moment with use cases is just out of this world. Yeah.
So let's go back in time just a little bit to back when Microsoft announced that they open sourced PowerShell, PowerShell core. Jeffrey Snover was on the podcast. You knew about this before because you guys were working with Microsoft. Tell me what you can tell me about what you worked on together and how it progressed.
So clearly we've been working with them on it for a while now. As Jeffrey said when he was on your podcast, it's not just something they woke up and said, "Why don't we do this?" and flip the switch, right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing takes a while. And the fact that it's based on .NET Core and PowerShell Core means there's a lot of stuff missing.
Yeah.
So they needed partners to help them work out what is missing, what's needed before we can actually get this out the door.
Right.
So they came to us very early on, very, very early builds, even before they had builds, and said, "Hey, we're looking at doing this. Are you interested?" And of course, us being VMware and having a good mix of Windows and Linux and Mac customers, we jumped all over this because we've never had a great solution for a CLI for our Mac and Linux users. They've kind of always been sat in the background, begrudgingly looking at the Windows guy, like, how come he gets all the cool tools?
So that as a PowerShell fan, that's what I would think.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not the same, right?
Yeah.
Maybe they're accustomed to different tools.
Yeah, totally.
Plenty of Python fans out there, for example.
Yeah.
Were they missing out?
Well, the thing is,
did you hear that they were missing out?
We never had a great Python SDK either, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I mean, we did have a good Perl SDK,
right.
But Perl is kind of a language into itself.
It's kind of a dead language.
Right.
I mean, not totally dead, but for most purposes, it's not where people go to do new projects.
Right. And even with Python, you're still sat there and you have to code something up.
Not as high level.
It's not as high level at all. Abstracting something into a single line of code doesn't exist in Python, right? And then sometimes you just want to get something done quick.
It seems to me that it could have been done in the sense that Python has a REPL, so you could type Python and you could type command, like import, PowerCLI, for example, and then the next line you could do some sort of stuff.
Sure,
but I guess you would have had to have invented commandlets for Python.
Right. Well, commands. Yeah, exactly. I doubt if they call them commandlets. But
that's what I'm saying.
And we had
functions existed, methods existed, properties existed, but that next high level of expression, that
we kind of had that a little bit with ESX CLI. That's a Python-based CLI but it only manages ESX CLI. ESX. It didn't manage vSphere.
Right. It didn't.
So
because it's a different API.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so yes, we could have done it, but it would have taken a lot of work, and then we'd have 2 focus points. And, that's never good when you're talking.
So wait a second, are you telling me that your cross-platform automation toolkit direction is PowerShell Core?
We're seeing how it goes.
Okay.
I would love to be able to make that decision right now. Yeah. The engineering cost that would save me and the focus that I could give to a single command line utility would be fantastic. Yeah. I think it's still early days to work out, is this what Linux and Mac guys actually want to use? Yeah. Right, like you just said, do they really want to use this, or are they going to get stuck with the way that it works? Do they want something more Linux-like? Yeah, because you do get those guys.
Sure.
I'm not using it. It's Microsoft created it. Yeah, still, but look at this.
Yeah,
I don't care. Microsoft created it. Right. Okay.
I'm not gonna. You're not gonna make that guy happy.
Right. Yeah. So I'm hedging my bets a little bit at the moment. We'll see what happens.
That's fair.
Yeah. But back to your original question. We were working with Microsoft for a long time on this, working out what we needed to be able to port PowerCLI over to .NET Core and PowerShell Core, and making sure that everything in .NET existed that we were using, and all the business logic that we had that used our APIs was transportable over. not just to those versions, but also on a non-Windows OS as well. Because, if Windows is there and you can guarantee it's there, sometimes you'll put stuff in your code that uses certain Windows features. So
what was the size of the porting effort? Was it large or medium or small?
We're still going through it right now, to be honest with you. We've ported the main vSphere commandlets across, the main vCenter commandlets across, and we've ported the virtual distributed switch commandlets across. We've still got about 7 or 8 different modules that we need to port across to core, and we're doing that slowly. We released PowerCLI Core as something called a fling, if you remember your VMware days. Yeah, that's a way for us to kind of release alpha code.
Yeah,
it's like, this isn't supported, but go check it out and see what you do with it. Let's see where it goes, right? And then we can rapidly deliver that and update it and bring more and more modules out, fix issues, find bugs, get more confident in the fact that the code actually works.
Now, have y'all been blocked by many critical bugs in PowerShell core itself, or has it been pretty robust enough for you?
You know what? Because we mainly call the vSphere APIs, we didn't rely too much on the core PowerShell stuff. Having said that, yes, there is 4 or 5 things that are still biting us, like credential stores and stuff like that, stuff that isn't multi-platform at the moment that we need to sort out. And I know that people writing modules around the REST stuff that manage a bunch of VMware, like NSX or vRealize automation. There's a bunch of REST-based functions. They are also being bit by the differences. So that stuff still exists. We're working our way through it, and the Microsoft guys are doing a great job. We have a bi-weekly call with them. So we stay close with them. We tell them how it's going and what we need to fix next.
Good. So let's talk a little bit about news in VMware and announcements and product features and how those made it to what your subsequent PowerCLI releases.
Sure. So recently, going back to the Windows version, of course. Okay. I have to clarify now, right? So going back to the Windows version, we are still maintaining and enhancing that version while we're working on the PowerCLI core, the Linux and Mac version. So in VMworld this year, we announced PowerCLI 6.5 along with vSphere 6.5. Sure. So in that, we've got a bunch of new features. And the first one that and the reason I wanted to come on this show is because every time I came on this show, you asked me the same question over and over again. Do you remember what it is? Do you remember?
Is it a module yet?
Yes, that's the question.
Okay.
And we are 100% modules now. you wouldn't believe how hard it is to get to that point, right? It sounds pretty easy, but when you've got a product that people rely on and you need to maintain backwards compatibility of, you can't just go swapping stuff out and fixing stuff. And when you're working with a number of different teams inside of VMware as well that have their own products and their own priorities, you need to prove that while you're doing this is a good thing. So this stuff takes time, but we're there, and
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I know it's been a long time coming.
Right, exactly. It sounds like Alcoholics Anonymous, doesn't it? Hi, my name's Alan, and I am modules.
No, you were snap-ins. Now,
so I've given up the snap-ins. I'm never going to go back. I haven't touched a snap-in in at least 3 weeks. But yeah, so that's it sounds like such a simple thing now, but it was a huge thing while we were getting there, and we had to do all sorts of things under the cover to get to that point. But we are modules, and I am looking forward to the future and what modules brings to me. Being able to finally get into the PowerShell gallery, enable people to do an install module PowerCLI, enabling us to potentially work faster and release faster as well, and push updates faster. I'm looking forward to what that brings. So modules, big thing.
What about, did you see any performance? I mean, have you guys, so performance, I remember way back when I was in the field and using PowerCLI, and at some point you had to do lots of tweaks in order to get some decent performance out. And it instead of get VM, if you had 1,000 VMs, you had to go to the views and do the escape hatches and all this stuff. And I know you added some features over time that addressed that. How's that gone over time? Have you done any more performance enhancements?
Yeah, I think actually the release we missed, and I didn't come on the show, was where we made the big updates for the get VM command, actually the most used command, in which we put parallelism, and we did a bunch of stuff under the covers, so that when you did a get VM, it actually spawned off a number of different jobs to get that information, bring it back, and only bring back certain properties that got displayed to the screen.
Hold on, we're adjusting our volume to hopefully reduce any echo or something.
Yeah, so we went back to get VM. We spawned off all these separate jobs that when we got the information, got certain properties so that the stuff that was displayed to the screen would come back first, or it did things in a much more performant way. So it's actually faster than get view now if you do get VM.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's like super fast because of the way that get view works, and it turns back 2 properties rather than 1. So we did a ton of work around that commandlet, and if there are other commandlets that our customers find slow, I would love to know about it so that we can do the same thing there as well.
Gotcha.
But yeah, performance is a thing that we definitely looked at, because as we said, like tens of thousands of virtual machines, you want that stuff to come back pretty quick.
So what VMware or what vSphere features dropped in 6.5 that would be interesting to talk about?
Yeah, the other small thing, but kind of small from the product point of view, but big from my point of view and VMware's point of view, is that we actually renamed it as well.
Okay.
So before it was vSphere PowerCLI, but now it's actually VMware PowerCLI. Okay. It sounds like a small thing.
Yes, it does.
But internally, it's like, okay, this is the CLI that manages VMware products.
Oh, okay.
Not vSphere, VMware products, right? So, it's all about the rebranding and the positioning to make sure that everybody internally knows what we're doing. Yeah. And externally, they know, okay, this is the one CLI that I can use to manage everything.
So give me an example of something that might have seemed out of scope, but now is in scope because of that subtle change.
Yeah, just any of the other products, any of the way that VMware is organized is in a bunch of different BUs that run their own products and do their own things, like the management BU that does the management products, the cloud platform business unit that produces the cloud platform tools like vSphere. And then, so any of the other BUs would kind of look at us and go, well, that CLI is for your customers, and that CLI is something that, they don't get the fact that the person that was using their tool was the same person that was using vSphere.
Isn't that ridiculous?
It kind of is, right? Yeah. I mean, when you don't come from that customer mentality like we did, I think people often miss that out, right? So people don't want to jump between CLIs and re-log in several times, and also handle the storing of credentials, and even work with different CLIs in the way that they work with parameters and store things, and all this kind of stuff makes a nightmare for admins. Yeah.
So I guess like vRealize would be one example.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Are they
one concrete example in the 6.5 release was actually that we released Horizon View.
Okay.
So
that's the VDI stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So the ability to be able to create pools of desktops and create these desktops that your users can look into.
Nice.
So that was released in 6.5. They did, if you remember back, have some early commandlets that they released that only worked on their management server, wouldn't work remotely, and were called PowerShell, but it was kind of like if you give a Java developer PowerShell and say, go create some commandlets, they come back with something that they call PowerShell. Doesn't look like PowerShell in the slightest. None of the conventions. Yeah. So I think they went through that learning curve. In fact, one of the blog posts I did before I was at VMware, I was absolutely slating these commandlets. And now I'm at VMware, it's kind of coming back to bite me in the ass a little bit. Because they're like, hey, you're the guy that wrote that blog post, right? And I'm like, let's just fix it, okay? and they have. They've done a great job. They've released a new module in 6.5, which accesses 100% of their API. So it has the get view type or stores a variable. where you can go to the extension data and you can pull back 100% of their
exactly.
API, all their properties, all their methods. So they have two commandlets. They have a connect and they have a disconnect. But they have everything in their extension.
Right.
Yeah,
so at least there's no barriers to if you want to learn the API behind the scenes.
Yeah. And one of the things that they did as well is actually came up with a bunch of advanced functions and put them in a GitHub repo. And said, you know what, guys, we're learning from our mistakes. We're not going to give you something you don't like. Let's put the code out there. You guys can adjust it if you don't like it, or tell us what's wrong. Get to the point where we actually have some good-looking commandlets, and then we'll bring them back in-house and start supporting them and give you exactly what you want.
Now, are y'all accepting contributions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, the PowerCLI examples repository on GitHub. It's in there, and I've added a few contributions myself. So yeah, definitely check.
Yeah. So any other products around that you can talk about that that are doing PowerShell work and that you're going to be part of?
So one of the other products that came out, we kind of enhanced the commandlets, added a lot more commandlets in 6.5, was vSAN, which is virtual SAN. So that's the ability to use the local storage in your ESX hosts to munge all together and create one store that's based on Flash and non-Flash or both Flash tiers, kind of a capacity and a performance tier. And then make it highly resilient across the different hosts. So that feature in itself is getting a lot of traction at VMware at the moment. It's a fantastic feature. It's got a lot of different capabilities now, and we basically surfaced up those capabilities through PowerCLI. So introduced a bunch of new commandlets to get things like the cluster configuration, update the database that tells you the hardware compatibility list, create disk groups, create the vSAN disks, look at all the fault domains and anything that might go wrong with it, test the performance, test the creation, end-to-end deployment and configuration of this vSAN feature.
Okay, gotcha.
Which again is in a different view. So
that's cool.
VMware PowerCLI. Yeah.
So do you have responsibility for that particular set of commands?
The way it works under the covers, the sausage making, we work directly with the team that creates these commandlets, but these guys are the subject matter experts. They know vSAN inside out, right? So it makes sense for us to teach them, this is how you create PowerCLI commandlets, right? Now go do this for your stuff. So we have strict guidelines, kind of build on the PowerShell guidelines that they've created. Say, this is how you create a PowerShell commandlet if you're at VMware, so that it looks the same way as our stuff, it works the same way. This is the way you contribute your build to us. We then put it all together into the same package and then ship it as PowerCLI.
Oh, okay. Okay, so there is, then you are responsible for that front end piece of it.
Yeah,
the user-facing part.
Because we're still shipping as an MSI file at the moment. 6.5 we are modules, but we don't ship like modules yet. We still ship as an MSI. I'm looking forward to the future where perhaps the vSAN team will directly go into the PowerShell gallery and update their own commandlets whenever they want.
So you're a release vehicle for them right now.
Yeah, exactly. That's right.
Now, is there any talking about the MSI? Is there any barrier to you installing it with the MSI and then grabbing the module folders?
No, absolutely. You can definitely do that. Yeah, you can definitely do that. In fact, I did that the other day. Just took the modules folder.
Because that was really part of the barrier between a snap-in and a module. The snap-in had to be registered.
Exactly. And there were certain applications or certain commandlets that would use binaries under the covers, so we had to make sure they were in the right places. Things like that. So that you could just drag and drop it, and that they were, self-running and didn't need registration as well.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So there was a question in the chat room.
Yeah.
Let's see, vdisk commandlets. Are there comments about the new vdisk commandlets?
Yeah. So just jumping straight to that feature. That was another new feature in 6.5. In fact, it was a new feature in vSphere 6.5 as well.
Define this feature because I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, sure. In fact, not many people are, to be honest with you, because it's brand new in 6.5. And it's basically what it is doing is creating independent disks. So before, when you would create a disk, it always had to be, you would create a VM that had disks, right? And then if you were to destroy that virtual machine, it would be like, okay, well, are you going to destroy the disks as well, or are you going to leave them around? And if you left them around, you had to move them into different folders, and you were orphans. It was like you were treating, the life cycle of disk was tied to the virtual machine. Yeah. So it was always a bit clumsy.
Yeah, because I remember actually having to go look for orphan VMDKs because those could consume your space.
Exactly.
Know about it.
Yeah. So VDisks are basically first-class disks.
Okay.
They are an entity in themselves. You can create them, you can delete them, you can snapshot them, you can attach them. They live outside of the virtual machine format. You can attach them to a virtual machine and use it, but when you delete that virtual machine, you can choose to leave it there and treat them independently. So this was a new feature in 6.5. It doesn't have a UI. It only has an API, and it only has PowerCLI mandates. So
that's cool.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So yeah.
So do you have people starting to get you like? Why would I do that?
Good question. I asked the PM the same thing. Again, this was a bunch of commandlets that were created by the storage view, and I think I didn't get a good answer. I think. Well, or if I did, I don't remember the good answer.
Okay, let me pivot a little bit, and we might come back to this.
Yeah.
What is VMware doing, and do you have any thoughts on containers?
Yeah, good question. I have a lot of thoughts on containers. I love containers.
I do too.
I've been using Docker a lot recently.
I know.
I did some training on it, and I've been messing around with Docker files for a while.
Right.
That stuff's pretty sweet, actually.
It really is neat.
And I know Docker is just the automation and the framework of managing these containers.
Yeah.
But still, it has some pretty cool features.
But they defined some terms and some objects that gave you a pretty neat interface to those objects at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's it can be separate from virtualization.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there's places where it might make sense to use things together.
Yeah.
So like what is you excuse me I'm not dead. Okay. I would like to hear what a VMware PM has to say about how that how containers are evolving and how people are using them, and especially in a VMware environment.
Well, so what I see from the VMware side of things is that a lot of the people that want to use containers are developers, and they'll go to the VMware admin and they'll go, I need a machine to run my containers on, right? Because they can either run it on bare metal, or they can run it inside a virtual machine, or run it wherever. So the VMware guy is still the guy that's like, okay, I need to provision something so that this guy can run a container, right? When he runs his application in the corporate environment, he still needs to run it somewhere. And it needs to abide by the corporate policies and the security policies and the networking and all of that good stuff. Mm-hmm. So we have a great product at VMware called vSphere Integrated Containers.
Okay.
So essentially what that does is sets up a Docker endpoint on a VMware environment, and when you use Docker, you just change your Docker host to talk to VMware. Now the developer knows no different. He uses Docker in the same way that he always does.
Right.
But when he pushes the host to production, it pushes it to VMware. We spin up a virtual machine, host that for him, and you use it in exactly the same way.
Okay.
So as far as the developer is concerned, he's got what he needs because he can produce his applications, he can host them real fast, and the admin still has control and can still monitor it, still work with it in the same way that he would do a virtual machine.
So does the developer or the consumer of the containers, do they have to think about the provisioning of the size of the host?
The developer doesn't know.
Okay.
Yeah, this is all handled for them through the
Good. I mean, that's what I would expect.
But the reason I love Docker is because PowerCLI Core, one of the first things I did when I was messing around with it was got fed up of installing it. So, going through the install.net, going through all the install the OpenSSL, all that stuff. So I actually wrote a Docker file for PowerCLI Core. So you can literally do a Docker pull VMware /PowerCLI Core, and it will pull PowerCLI Core straight from the internet, and you have PowerCLI Core up and running. Docker pull VMware /PowerCLI Core.
Nice.
I was doing it right now.
I'm just deciding whether I should hit the enter button right now because it'll cut up our Skype.
Yeah.
So I'll just let that sit. Right
there. So that's awesome because that means that essentially you need to have nothing installed, and you can just do that and have PowerCLI straight away. And when you do a Docker run and you run that, you have PowerCLI up and running, and you have all our modules pre-installed.
Yeah.
So you can literally go Docker run, and then here's my script on my local machine, map it into this Docker container, run it, and then when it's finished, it just destroys the entire container, and there was no existence of it ever being there. So,
but
awesome.
If you want to persist it,
the
way that you would typically do that in a Docker-friendly way is you would have Docker has a feature for volumes, and you would runtime, so it would be a container, and you'd have your data in another container, like the configuration files or your database or whatever, and you can link the two together.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been using volumes.
vDisks, man. That's why I want to come back to virtual disks.
We do have actually a Docker volume driver for vSphere as well for VMFS. So you can actually do that with vDisk or with some of our other data stores as well.
When you use so your Docker volume driver, what does it create on the VMware side?
That's a good question. I'm not an expert on that. I believe what it does is just allows you to use the persistent storage
whenever it goes straight to
your host
data store, or does it use a VMware? a VM?
Yep, good question. I don't know. I work in a company that has some awesome technologies, and to keep up with all of them is tough.
Yeah. Well, that was what I thought of when we were talking about, okay, why would somebody use a vDisk?
Yeah.
I was like, because I want to track the life cycle of the data that goes along with the containers.
Yeah.
And the container is not connected directly to the VM.
That's a good use case.
Container.
I like it. Yeah, I'll check that out.
All right. So
the other thing I love about that, just geeking out a little bit, is the fact that for me to update PowerCLI core, all I need to do now is update a GitHub repository, because my Docker
and then
hub
your Docker hub
is
image
set up to build it. It's sweet. It's so cool.
I've got one too. I've got just the one hub image, and it's not anything super interesting to anybody outside of Splunk, but you set it up and you say, go link over to my GitHub account and then watch for any changes, and then you can do a commit, and then the image gets built seconds later, and then everybody else can just pull it.
And then go run this somewhere, and when you launch, map this volume that has a bunch of pester tests in it, and go run these pester tests and tell me if it still works. This stuff is pretty cool.
So Jonathan asked, does VMware have a product that provides an abstraction layer for containers? Do we need another abstraction layer, Jonathan? Like, containers are an abstraction layer.
Well, I'm talking about from a perspective of a layer that provides a, kind of containers as a service. So I don't have to care. I just publish my application and it ends up in a container somewhere on some VMware server, and I don't have to know or care.
Yeah, that's kind of what vSphere Integrated Containers is. You just go, I want to publish this container somewhere, and you let the IT guy handle the somewhere.
Okay.
So that kind of is what it is. We have a bunch of different things that sit on top of that as well. And we have, actually, one of the things that has been branched off, if you like, from the traditional VMware products so the way it used to work is you have a bunch of ESX hosts, you install Virtual Center, and you use Virtual Center to manage your ESX hosts and your virtual machines. Well, one of the things that's been spun off recently is something called Photon Controller. Now, what that is no Virtual Center, and all the ESX hosts talk to each other, and they purely manage containers. So you only use it for containers. So you don't have the overhead of vCenter, but you also don't have the abilities and the features that are in vCenter as well. It purely is like go do the right thing with my containers and launch them and make them available to this subset of hosts.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, that's a new kind of a spin-off, if you like, of what we did with ESX, and it's pretty cool. Yeah.
So okay, so we've got. I think we did pretty good delivery there on containers, and I'm pretty excited about where all that's going. There was, I guess, it's with vSphere integrated containers, so I need to actually play with that. What else do you have?
So some of the other stuff we did in 6.5 as well, we released some commandlets for virtual volumes. And virtual volumes is another storage feature It's and I'm probably just going to get this completely wrong. So if you're a VMware guy listening to this, just ignore me, and I'll make it up as a question.
Wait, aren't you supposed to be an authority on this stuff?
The PowerCLI side of stuff, I can write scripts with it, and I know what it does. But vVols, it's still it's a different abstraction of a data store.
Okay.
So essentially, the array gives you a vVol, a virtual volume,
and is that
you
where
use
you
that
put,
volume
like,
to store your virtual machine.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like having hundreds of data stores, but the actual array knows what it's doing with this stuff. Okay. So you're not restricted to the to LUNs essentially.
Yeah.
That's the best way I can describe it, being a non-vVol person.
I won't push you any further.
But we do have a bunch of commandlets that allow you to use that. So even though I don't know what the feature is, I'm pretty good at writing commandlets or writing scripts that use the commandlets.
Yeah.
We're able to work with some of the replication features of vVols, be able to get one of the vVol volumes to fail over to another site and bring that back up again. Be able to work with the storage policy-based management side of vVols, essentially saying, if you're this kind of virtual machine, then you want to land on this type of vVol that has maybe replication set up, or has quality of service set up, or certain features set up from the array on this. So yeah, the commandlets are all there. You can manage the feature inside out.
So, did you have other features to talk about? Because
we do. Yeah, it's pretty feature-packed release. So we've been through the no more snap-ins. We also made some adjustments to the core vSphere commandlets as well. Okay. So the main commandlets that are our bread and butter right now. One of the features that came out in a previous version of vSphere, I think it was is the ability to be able to do a vMotion. Oh. So you can essentially take your virtual machine from one vCenter, tell it to go live on another vCenter on this host and attach to this network on this data store, and it will move that
could take forever,
live.
Right?
It could take forever, yeah, but if you've got fast connection, which they pretty much guarantee you need to have for this feature to work.
Right.
But you can do that, and if you think about the recent announcement we made with AWS,
I was going to
right, exactly. You can essentially move a virtual machine from your on-site into the cloud live.
Okay, that's insane.
And you can automate it.
So did VMware create a product that is the abstraction layer or the translation layer for AWS's API, or did they create something and it lives on their side?
No, so vSphere
in a partnership.
It's a partnership. Essentially, the partnership is AWS gives the hardware, we give the software and manage the service. So essentially what it is a version of vSphere that's in the cloud, pre-set up for you. We manage it, we update it, we install it. It's literally vSphere.
Okay.
Same APIs.
It's in your account.
Yeah, it's in your account.
Okay.
So when you sign up, if you go onto the site when it's out, you'll sign up and you'll say, I want 3 hosts, I want this amount of storage, go create me a service. It'll create the service and then give you back a vCenter with all of this pre-configured and ready for you to use just in the cloud.
So if I create a virtual machine and I put it in my, what do you call it?
On-premise or AWS?
If you put it in
AWS, yeah.
Does it also show up as, for example, an EC2 instance?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
You can still use the EC2 services because they're essentially APIs and CLIs, right? They're like to do that. Okay. And there'll be some tight integration between those services and what you can do with vSphere. But they are, it's vSphere in the cloud.
Okay. And I imagine if I could probably ask you several different ways, and I could just hear it now. You know how it's vSphere in the cloud.
It's kind of like vSphere if it was in the cloud.
It's kind of like vSphere in the cloud. Okay.
Yeah, I know. You have to think about this for a minute.
Because that's not what Amazon. That's not what AWS does.
Right.
Until they did.
Yes.
Okay then. So do you see? Okay, from the AWS API or GUI, manage the web page stuff, do you see any of the vSphere elements?
I think that's still yet to be decided. I mean, it's we literally announced it. There's nothing there yet. You can't go out and use this right now.
When do they say it's going to be?
Good question. I don't think they're announcing dates right now, so I probably shouldn't.
Yeah. Well, I know the timing of it was last week. Their convention. That's why they announced it last week, because that was when you announced news. We announced it at VMware. They announced it last week. Okay. Yeah. So the service will be there, and I think it's going to bring up a lot of interesting use cases. The ability to add a host straight into your environment as you need them, and only pay for that host for the amount of time that you use it is pretty cool, right? Because you can literally use your applications on premise. And then as you need to burst, you can kind of move the virtual machines up there, burst out the hardware, take up as much room as you want, scale that back down again, and then even bring that app back in-house again if you want. Yeah. So, and you don't have to retrain people.
Exactly.
You can continue to use the same management tools that you're
already
using.
All the products that use the vSphere API, it's the same API.
Because it's vSphere in the cloud. So, Air.
Yes.
vCloud Air.
vCloud Air.
Is that a thing still, or is this kind of...
It is still a thing, yes.
Okay.
They're focused on certain use cases.
Okay.
There's a lot of DR there. There's a lot of certain particular workloads that they're focusing on. We still have commandlets that allow you to manage vCloud Air and work with vCloud Air.
Okay.
Alan, does VMware still have an orchestrator product?
Oh, wait.
Sorry, say that again, Jonathan?
Does VMware still have an orchestration product?
Yes, we do. We have something called vRealize Orchestrator, it's called now. It used to be called vCenter Orchestrator, but it's vRealize Orchestrator. That enables you to do the kind of workflow, drag and drop actions onto a Visio-style workflow and then hit play and watch it run through.
Does it have a PowerShell action on there?
It has the ability to run PowerShell. Essentially what it will do is it will call a scripting host that runs a PowerShell script and then brings the results back from that script and then manipulates those. So, and I think it has the ability to also run certain commands on an external host as well using, WinRM essentially to be able to run that and then bring back the results. So you can do integration into PowerShell using that, and one of the things that I'm toying around with and one of the possibilities that is now made available to me is the fact that as this is a Linux appliance and we now have PowerCLI Core, what would it look like if we put PowerCLI Core and PowerShell Core on this appliance and gave people the ability to run PowerShell and PowerCLI natively in this orchestration platform? I'm not saying that we're doing that at the moment, but I definitely think it's worth us looking at.
But you're not saying that you're not doing it.
I'm not saying we're not doing it. I'm not saying we are doing it.
So that runs on a Linux appliance, okay.
So, but I guess also if you wanted to, I can see PowerShell Core being hopping off point because it is a Linux appliance and there's only there'll be restrictions on what you can do, execute on that box perhaps.
Right.
You could still do remoting out from there.
Oh, definitely.
When remoting is solid on PowerShell Core,
yep.
Just remote out to your Windows stuff.
Right. It comes down to the use case, right? I mean, being able to do this on hundreds of remoting machines and do it highly parallel probably makes sense to certain tasks. Other tasks that are quick fire and forget, when this event happens, go run this, might make sense just to be there locally because you don't have to set up another host and then set up the connection and then work out all this stuff and deal with sessions.
Okay, that's fine. There was a question in the chat room about DSC.
Yeah.
Are you guys doing anything with DSC and PowerCLI?
Yeah, desired state configuration. We're definitely looking at DSC. We're not.
He knows what the acronym means, guys.
Yes. That's a plus. Good start, right? We're definitely looking at it from the PowerCLI team. We're seeing what our customers are doing. Luke Deakins, the famous Luke Deakins, has done some great work with DSC and PowerCLI and come up with some scripted DSC resources to enable you to work with that. He's put them in GitHub, he's put them on his blog, and I know he's looking for people to help him expand that. We are certainly looking at it and working out the right way to do that and trying to convince Microsoft to make scripted DSC resources available on Linux as well, which would be interesting to us.
Yeah. I guess there's a lot of other pieces that may or may not exist yet to make DSC work on Linux.
Absolutely.
Because there's no local configuration manager. I don't know how that would work out.
Yeah.
I imagine they're thinking about it.
Yeah. But DSC is definitely something I'm highly interested in, and I want to hear about the use cases more so that I can raise it in my priority. You know, we've had a bunch of work, infrastructure work to do to get to modules. And then, you know, my next phase is going to be about how do we get into the PowerShell gallery and make it easy for people to install. Yeah. And then we start getting to the interesting phase where we can start doing a lot more features. So, whereas now it's kind of a mix of features and infrastructure.
Right. So aside from DSC, what about the other continuous configuration management tools? Do you see much use of those with PowerCLI, and anything stand out you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think you mean things like Puppet, Chef, Sol, Ansible. Yeah, definitely. There's a huge Puppet following inside of VMware and also with the customers. I haven't seen them do too much with PowerShell. I've definitely seen them use the Puppet modules that are available for our APIs and go directly to our APIs. I think before it was seen as, well, I need another Windows host to be able to do that, right? And in a lot of our customers,
only relatively recently got rid of the Windows requirement for managing it.
Yes, exactly.
When did that happen?
Our VCSA, well, it's been around for a while. Yeah. But, you know, we're doing a big push on it at the moment. It makes more sense. In fact, a lot of the features are only coming out on VCSA now. So, you know, it makes more sense. And, you know, we don't require a Windows box. We certainly still work with Windows.
Now, is the API through VCSA and vCenter, is it the same?
Until 6.5, yes. The API, the SOAP API that's there, yes, exactly the same. Okay. There is a new REST API, which is something that my team has been working on heavily, that came out in 6.5. And then there's different features within that REST API. So there's some of the normal vCenter management stuff like creating virtual machines, data stores, all that good stuff, right, that's available. But there's also an appliance management API as well. And clearly that's only available on the VCSA. It allows you to do things like, you know, set NTP, create users, stuff that's specific to the VCSA that Windows kind of already has. It has its own user management, has its own service management, has its own monitoring, stuff like that.
So REST API, you know, what does that look like? You know, so I guess is that your project?
Yeah, it is, yes.
Okay, cool. So is that going to go across all of the same? I'm just thinking about, so for example, at Splunk, we have a REST API for everything, and the GUI uses the REST API to do all the things that it does. Yeah. And we have a toolkit here and there, an SDK, several SDKs. They all use the REST API. That's the way that ours was built. Ours was built in a different order. Different things. So, you know, are you going to end up like refactoring things?
We are, yeah, indeed. I mean, we're kind of coming at it a little bit backwards, but you know what? The market's changed, right? We need to get to that point where we give our customers a REST API. We give them. It's not just about going from SOAP to REST. It's about going from a complicated SOAP API to a simplified REST API. Right?
I remember at one point I remember getting into the intricacies of that, and it's quite interesting.
It's tough, right? I mean, if you look at the original use case, it was written for the UI. It was written for some of our larger partners. You know, some of people like HP, Dell. You know, people that can afford their own development arm and be able to have the skills to work with a complicated API in some complicated SDKs. And then if you fast forward to nowadays, you know, every man in his band wants to work with an API, and they want it to be simple, and they want it to be REST-based because that's what's on the internet and all the tools are written around it. So now, yes, we are having to go back through and simplify our API as we move it over to REST. And then start layering the tools back on top of that. You know, luckily for us, we are doing some refactoring and things like the UI anyway, going from Flash to HTML5. So, you know, all that stuff kind of comes together into what is turning out to be a very modern, awesome application.
Well, they'll probably change that paradigm. Right. You know, you won't even finish this one, and then they'll be like,
well, that's the great thing about
REST is old.
That's the great thing about the toolkit that we devised. You know, REST is a presentation layer to us.
Okay.
So if somebody comes out with something better, you know, we call it BEST rather than REST. If they come out with BEST next week, then we can quickly change our entire infrastructure and everything that's designed around our API modeling to produce this new best interface.
That's pretty smart.
It is very smart.
Does that reflect also to the PowerShell commands? I mean, is a lot of that code will just kind of follow?
Yeah, so we're working on that. We're working on that right now. You know, there's part of me that says I would love to be able to generate commandlets for everything that exists. But there's also part of me that goes, what would they look like? How easy would they be to use?
Yeah, I remember we had, I think you and I might have had this conversation together back when the Cisco UCS commands had come out.
Right.
Because, Eric and company, they went down the auto-generated route. And even he was like, yeah, some of them are kind of canned looking and they have a different feel.
Right.
And then they had to write others by hand.
Yeah, I think there's, if we can get to that 80% point where we can generate 80% of the logic and what's there, and then we can kind of go in and handcraft that extra 20% and round the edges to make them look nice.
Then,
exactly. Then that would be great. That would be fantastic.
Small batch.
Yeah. And then we can cover everything that's in, at the moment, we can actually cover everything that's in the vSphere REST API through PowerCLI. It wasn't one of the things I made a big deal out at VMware, but it's certainly there. And you can access, in a similar way to the get view commandlets, you can access the entire REST API and all the features. And you can discover the API, you can discover the services. In fact, we have an API for the API. So it's kind of like, tell me what you know. And then it comes back and goes, I know vSphere. And it knows about VMs. And VMs have these properties and these methods. And so you can essentially, one of the cool things I did, again, just geeking out for a second, being a PM, every now and again, I like to sit down and just write a script. Yeah. Just to take me back into that non-PowerPoint, non-planning mode and just be like, screw this day-to-day stuff, right? I'm going to go back to my roots here. Yeah. So I sat down and I did that. I wrote a script that looked at our REST API, queried it for everything and then generated some advanced functions based upon the information that was in there. So it's a script that writes scripts. And this 120-line piece of code wrote a 2,000-line piece of code that had 30 functions in there that worked with all of the features that were in the API. So being able to do that, it's great. I love doing that stuff still. Awesome. There's still a geek inside this PM
I'm glad it didn't die.
Yeah, not yet. PowerPoint's doing its best though.
Yeah. Jonathan, any more questions from you?
I don't have any other questions at this point. I'm looking for a good System Center orchestrator replacement.
Really?
Yes, I am.
Is your relationship rocky?
Yes, it is. It's a little rocky. It's getting a little stale.
Yeah, I think I learned some new curse words when we were together at the MVP summit. We were talking about dinner one night.
I can neither confirm or deny that because it happened at the MVP summit. Alan, I met Jonathan Med in person for the first time at the MVP summit this year.
Was it the first time?
Yeah, we had never met in person, so that was pretty cool.
Wow. Did the world cope with this thing? I mean, two Johns doing podcasts in the same room. Was that okay?
It was good. He asked me to bring my yo-yo. That was the big thing he wanted to see. He was like, I want to see you do yo-yo tricks. Okay. I can do that.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, he is. It was fun.
I've heard of Terraform.
Do you have anything interesting to say about it?
I don't have anything interesting to say. I can say that I've heard of Terraform, and is your team responsible for Terraform integration? They are kind of, yes, but I want to talk to the Terraform guys more.
Okay, kind of, yes.
My team's responsible for creating the API, and therefore the integrations that come into our product should really go through our team because we are the subject matter experts of the API. Yeah. So we can best advise, Terraform in this example of the best way to integrate with our API.
So what is Terraform? I don't actually know what it is.
Yeah,
that's when you take an alien planet and you create an atmosphere and make it habitable.
Oh yeah, I knew that. I did know that. Now that you mention it. Yeah. Good.
I know what the word means. I don't know what it means in this IT product. Yeah, but I do need to figure that one out actually. and talk to the Terraform guys more. And if you are somebody using Terraform, please contact me because I want to hear your use cases.
So where should we send people to find out more about PowerCLI? Is the page that I found when I Googled it, it says VMware PowerCLI documentation, and it has PowerCLI 6.5 release 1. Is that the best place to go?
I know what this one. Let me see if I have this one right.
Go on for it.
VMware.com/go/PowerCLI.
Correct.
Yes.
But yeah, you can go there. That will take you directly to the communities. Or you can look at the PowerCLI blog. That's where we tend to put all of our announcements, put all the latest and greatest information, and keep in contact. We also have a Slack group on the VMware Code Slack channel.
Oh, that's cool.
So you can go there and you can go to PowerCLI. There's a number of PowerCLI groups actually. There's one in the PowerShell Slack channel. There's one in the VMware Code. There's
where are the experts and the most activity that you see? So let's not send people to 3 chat rooms. What's the best one?
Yeah, good question. So the VMware Code PowerCLI is where people go to hang out and talk PowerCLI.
There we go.
But the communities are where people go to log bugs or find scripts or get Luke to do their work for them.
Gotcha.
So
we'll
have
put a link in the show notes to the VMware Code Slack information.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan, did you have a final question for our esteemed guest?
We do. And the final question for you, Alan, is where do you like to go on vacation?
Oh, where do I like to go, or where would I like to go?
What's your favorite vacation destination, or the favorite place you've ever gone on vacation?
Wow, that's a good question. Seems like a vacation to me. I came from England and came into this wonderful country that I now live in. Not so much recently with the recent goings on in your political areas, but we won't go into that too much. But, this country has some wonderful sites, some wonderful places to visit. So I'm really enjoying going around the US at the moment and visiting these places that I only dreamed of visiting when I was a kid, and watching the Goonies when I was younger and watching The Lost Boys that was filmed in Santa Cruz. It just blows my mind.
That's cool.
To see these places now and go visit them and see the wonderful places that exist. And I live in a beautiful part of the world, right? California, we got Highway 1 15 minutes from my doorstep. Nice. So I constantly drive down Highway 1 and look at the beautiful views and the water and the beaches. Like I said, every day's a holiday for me right now.
That's fantastic.
But if I have to go on vacation,
if you're forced to go,
forced to leave, then and it's not my wife forcing me, that I need to go back to the UK and remember what the rain is like and that good stuff. Then I would somewhere like Hawaii, which is beautiful.
Oh, okay.
It's an interesting answer though, because you're a relatively recent transplant, so you've got a whole new country to explore.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
The stuff you guys take for granted.
Well, and in reverse too, right? I mean, because we don't have anything older than a few hundred years.
Yeah,
and most of it's much newer than that.
Yeah.
So to me, going to Europe and seeing something that was built in 1600 AD is just earth-shattering.
Yeah.
So
they have
I come over
pubs that are older than our whole country.
Say that again.
You have pubs that are older than our whole country.
Yeah.
Dude, I have sandwiches that are older than your country.
I don't know that that's something that you would promote, but
maybe cheeses or beers or whiskeys that are older in this country. Yeah, no, I agree. It's the different perspective. Though.
Well, thanks for coming and hanging out with us.
Yeah,
and I'm glad it worked out in person. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was great. Good seeing you guys.
Very cool.
Same here. All right, Jonathan, we're going to sign out from here.
All right. Good night, gentlemen. Thank you for your time.
Everybody in the chat room for your participation and questions and all that good stuff. And we'll talk to you next time.
Yep. Thanks, John.
All right, thanks. Cheers.